Good afternoon, Shane from DIY Retro Arcade. Today I wanted to show you how to install our 60-in-1 vertical conversion kit for the Arcade1Up vertical machines. I wanted to start by going over the items that the kit comes with. The kit will come with a pre-cut panel that goes in the front of the machine underneath the control panel. This is so you can easily mount your speakers. It does come with 2 speakers, an amplifier, and the cabling to hook that up with. If you'll notice on your panel piece here, you'll have 2 holes, and these 2 switches right here will go into that. These right here will wire to your JAMA harness, which will be for your service and your test switch. You'll have your standard buttons. The layout is usually 3 button with a player 1, player 2. It comes with all that. Your micro switches, the 60-in-1 board, of course. It'll come with this style joystick. This is probably my favorite one for the 60-in-1. It has the best feel and best gameplay in my opinion. We've had this JAMA harness made for the Arcade1Up machine. It's very stripped down. It's the basic of basic. It's everything you need and nothing that you do not. This thing is literally, it has a setup for 3 buttons, a player 1, a player 2, your test and your service, and of course your joystick. Other than that, there is no excess, anything extra. It's just, like I said, the bare bones, it's all you need. Plus it's short. It is about 1.5 feet. You don't really need a 4-foot long JAMA harness to install this. Again, it makes it just so much easier using this versus a full-size harness. First thing we're going to do is do a little bit of basic building before we actually get to the machine. You need to take these parts right here, which is basically like, again, your front panel, your 2 speakers, and your 2 switches that will be used for your service and your test buttons. You'll need to supply your own screws for the speakers. Any local hardware store should have them. We'll make a list of everything that you'll have to get from a hardware store versus what we provide. But all you'll need to do is basically break these down. We'll stick these in first. And again, it's so tight you can't get it off. There it goes. And the button color will be assorted. I don't have any way to give all green or all yellow or anything like that. Basically, take your nut and turn that. And take that. The next thing we're going to install is going to be the speakers. I have my bolts right here, my bolts and nuts. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of bolts here, so a couple of them are too long, but it'll work for the video. Again, this is very simple. I always like to turn the pins so they go to the inside. It'll make it a little bit easier whenever you go to wire them up. In fact, I'll probably just stick 2 in each of these. I don't really need to do all 4, so. Since this is just going to be a temporary setup to start with. And then we'll do this one. And I always suggest that you start all 4 screws in each corner before you tighten them down. That way you can move it around to get the best alignment so you can get all 4 screws in. But this is how the completed panel should work, or should look once you're done. And I'll show you the front side. This is what the front side of the panel will look like. Basically, this is ready to install at this point in the game. The next part of the install, I'm going to use this optional control deck. We make these here, and this is set up for the 61. Feel free to use the control panel that comes with your Arcade1Up. You can drill out your own holes. If you do decide to do that, you'll need to drill out the holes with a 1 1/8 inch spade bit. If you want to get this, we'll put the link in it as well. It'll make it a little bit easier to install. We do offer the plexiglass. We can T-mold them. We can also print the artwork for them as well. We'll have a generic layout for an artwork for it, hopefully within the next few days. So let's go ahead and assemble this real quick. These are very, very easy to put together. Again, take your buttons and just drop them in. Alright, let's flip this over and put the nuts to hold the buttons on. Hopefully I can do this with one hand. This is hard to do with one hand. It'll be much easier if you're not making a video. Don't crank them down super tight, because you'll have to move them to align the micro switches in the right direction you want them to point. You can tighten them up later. Next, we're going to install the micro switches. The easiest way to explain how to install these is to have the button turned like this, and then have this facing you, the color side, the red color side facing you. Take this hole, hook it on the very bottom here on the far left hand side, and then just pull it down and across, and it, and I missed the hole. And it'll latch right in. Now again, if you turn them all the same, it makes it a little quicker. And that. Actually, before I do this last one, let me show you one thing on these micro switches. I don't know if you can see it or not in the video, but on the switch you have this one right here that says COM, and then you have one that says NO, which is this one, and then you have NC. What that means is your COM is basically your black wire, and then on an arcade what you're going to use, the normally open is what you'll use, which means is basically whenever you push the button down, it closes the micro switch and activates the action. If you hook it to the normally closed, then basically the button will be on all the time. So you don't want to use ever normally closed on an arcade. So let's go ahead and hook that one in. Next, we're going to stick on the joystick. I've already drilled holes to help kind of speed up. I've already drilled them in here, so I know exactly where it goes. So we'll stick this together real quick. Again, I would start all your screws before you tighten them down. It just makes life easier. Always pre-drill your holes, especially if you're using the Arcade1Up control panel. The board is like an MDF material, and man, that stuff is like super flaky, and it just tears up. It just rips out the hole if you just try to screw a screw directly into it. If any of you have upgraded joysticks, you will know exactly what I am talking about. Tighten that down. There is that, and then it'll look just like that. That's pretty close. It ain't perfect, but it's pretty close. In order to put your pilot holes, what I usually do, I usually just set this down on the board, and then I lift it up over my head and look on the back side and get it as perfectly centered into this right here that I can, and then I just mark the holes, and then again I pre-drill. And it just makes life easy. In fact, let's go ahead and stick. Again, in a completed machine, I would already have my artwork down here, and I would already have the piece of plexiglass, because once you get the buttons down, you're done, guys. This is the final install point. But again, we're doing this just for show. So, all right. And turn your button here. This is where you would actually tighten up your buttons on these. These are the only ones that matter. You want to make sure these are straight. And then on these right here, what I usually like to try to do, me personally, I always like to turn them and point all one direction. Like that. It usually just makes stuff easier. And then I usually get a pair of pliers and I tighten them down good. Alright guys, let's actually go on to the next step. Before we get to the machine, again, this is where we should be at this point in the game. You should have this front panel fully assembled and your control panel fully assembled and ready to drop in. And this is all you should really have left at this point is your power supply, your amp, your EMI filter, your JAMA harness, and your PCB. Let's get started. First off, who caught my mistake? This one was upside down before. It happens. Pay attention to what you're doing. Let's go over some basics of how this JAMA harness is going to hook up and what's what. If we look at the front side of the control panel here, basically you'll have your joystick, your S1, S2, S3, player 1, player 2 buttons. I found that it's typically easier and quicker to label this stuff. It makes life a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and do that real quick right now. This will be player 1, player 2, S1, and then again this is going to be reversed and mirrored. So this right here is actually going to be your S2, which will be on this side right here, and this will make this S3. Next thing we want to label is going to be the joystick. It's going to be reversed. If you'll take this and you'll pull down, notice it's hitting this micro switch right here. So this right here will be down. When you push up, it's hitting this micro switch right here. So this one will be up. When you push to the left, you're hitting this one. And then when you go into the right, you're hitting this one. Actually, I can put that right there. A little better. And if you label this out first, it does make it a little bit easier to do the harness once you start. Let's go over the Yamaha basics here. We have a few different parts. We'll start with these. Here's your grounds, your plus 5 volts, your 12 volt. Those will all go to your power supply, and that'll all be grouped, all grouped in one little section here, all in this one little section. Then your second grouping will be your test switch, your coin, your player 1 start, your up, down, left, right, S1, 2, and 3. Now again, this is a single controller or single joystick, so we don't need all of it for the player number 2. So all we have for player number 2 side is going to be your service switch, your coin, and your start button for player 2. If you're not going to use a coin, then basically you can pull those out, which will be that one, and it'll be number 16 on both front and back. I'm actually going to go ahead and remove the coin wires, which again they're not needed for me, so there's no point in really having them. This is one less wire, so I'm going to cut that one out and just pull it out of the loom. I have to include them just in case some people do use them. And then on the back side, coin will be that one. So we'll cut that one there. And we'll go ahead and pull that one out of the loom. Long green. Alright, that's 2 less wires to mess with. Alright, let's go ahead and start wiring up the buttons. And what we'll do is basically to help move some of this stuff over, let's pull out the main wiring here. It's basically broken into 3 harnesses. So let's pull this one out because this is good. This all goes to the power supply. This right here will be the second player options that we have to hook up, and then this right here will be the player 1. This will be your main connection. This will be the little section of the harness that has the big bundle of ground loops. So let's start with this one. And basically the first one we're going to do is going to be, let's see, let's do the player 1 start, which is number 17, which is going to be the brown. So in here, let's find the brown wire. Notice there is 2 browns, so you have to look and see which one. Some colors are duplicated, so always just kind of take it and pull on it and see which one moves. So I know that's the correct brown. So player 1 start. We're going to hook it up. It'll go right here. Sometimes it don't want to cooperate. Before I get too far into this, actually let me explain one thing. On your micro switches, this right here is always going to be your ground. The angle is always the ground, and then you're always going to use the first one, which is going to be your normally open. It'll be labeled as NO. This bottom one will never be used, so you don't even have to worry about that one. And then the next one, let's do S1, which will be the blue wire. And I found that it's best to kind of do everything on one side. That way it keeps the harness semi kind of neat. And then next one, S2, will be the purple wire, which will be this one right here. This is actually a lot easier whenever you're not trying to make a video of it, so. And then S3 will be the gray wire. Which will go right there. And then let's actually start here on the up, which is the red wire. And up will go way over here. And on your joystick, again, you'll have a 90-degree, and you'll have one sticking straight out. These are labeled NO, which is normally open, and like I said again, the angle, so that's going to be the ground. Alright, next one will be down, which will be the orange. So we'll take that one, get right there. And then you have left, which is the yellow wire. And then your last one will be the green wire, which is your right, which will go way up here. Okay. That is all the player 1. All the wires are hooked up for it. The only wire you have to hook up for the player 2, if you flip this over, is going to be the player 2 start, which is the brown wire, which is laying right here. Again, you can pull these wires and make sure you're hooking them into the right one. But that's all you have to do is hook that one over here. Just take your time and hook the wires in one at a time. Tug on them and make sure you got the right one. We try not to duplicate colors, but man, there's only so many colors we can use. Once you have one wire on every one from the JAMA harness, you're basically at this point ready to install the grounds. You'll use this right here, which will be which is known as basically a daisy chain ground loop. And all you'll need to do with this is basically you kind of got to figure this out to how you have your harness setting to make sure that you can go from here and all the way across. Again, this is a pretty short JAMA harness. So usually I find if you go this route, it usually works out. And these things are ultra pain to get off once you stick them on, so it's good and it's bad. So make sure you don't have to pull them off and on too many times. And like I said, these blacks go all in the 90-degree pins. My eyes are absolutely horrible. It's hell being old. And jump across. This one. And you notice I'm going to skip one here. It doesn't matter. It'll still work just like it's supposed to. And we'll end right here. Maybe. Now at this point, the majority of your JAMA harness is all hooked up. You still have this little section of the harness right here with the red and the orange and a set of blacks for the grounds. What this right here goes to is, again, it's sectioned off by itself and it's done for a reason. This right here will actually go to your service and your test buttons. Okay, I did do a little bit of wire cleanup. I basically ran them some under, some over, which will basically give us a little more harness. One thing I want to show real quick before we actually go to the machine, I want to show how this will actually plug into everything. Your harness right here, you'll notice right here on this label it says part side. This will point upwards on the board. So basically your part side always goes up. Your solder side is just like what it says, it's where the solders are. Something you can also, the way you can also tell is your little bitty section of board right here. This is always your power. So look on your JAMA harness and where it shows at the 12 volt, 5 volt and ground and all that is, that will always go right here. So basically this right here will just plug in like this. And that's all there is to that end. On the power supply itself, I want to show you how that hooks up real quick. Let me slide this out of the way. And I'm just going to use the wiring harness. This right here is your section of the wiring harness for the power supply. What this cable right here is actually for, this won't be needed. It's for a coin mech that requires power, the CPU ones. Again, we have to have it on here. Some people do use it. The main wires that you'll use to hook up your power supply will be these right here. Will be your black, yellow, and red. Let me get your actual power supply here and I'll show you where everything goes. Here's your actual power supply right here. Let me explain what everything is here. You have your +5, your grounds, your +12. This will be a ground, a neutral, and a line. Basically, this section right here is what will hook to your JAMA harness. Your +5 will be the red wire. Your ground will be the black wire. Your +12 will be the yellow wire. What this far right here, this is what you'll actually hook to the EMI filter. Some people skip that and they'll hook this directly to the wall. I don't really suggest it. It's kind of a fire hazard in my opinion. If somebody trips over the cord, it'll rip it out and short out. But we'll get to that point in 1 second. Let me just show you how this would go. Basically, all you would do on this is, and on the ground, it doesn't matter which one you hook it to. They're both ground. Take your +5, your red wire, and it would go just like this. Your ground, again, it can be either one. It can be this ground or this ground. It does not matter. And then your +12 will be the yellow. Now, if the machine is using standard arcade coloring, this is what it'll always be. Yellow is always 12 volt and red's always 5 volt. And again, that's how it'll go right there. Let's go ahead and just go through the machine now, and we'll start mounting this stuff and showing how it all goes together. The first thing we need to do is to remove all the panels and stuff that we don't need. If you're using our control panel, then this one will have to be off, of course. If you're using this one with our kit, again, you're going to have to re-drill the holes. But this will basically come out and is no longer needed. Then this panel right here, this will be where your speaker grill goes. This will no longer be needed. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this panel right here just so you can see what's going on. Okay guys, I'm going to go ahead and mount the power supply, the PCB, and the amp inside the cabinet. You guys can do that on your own. I'll just show you a good place to mount it. But I'm going to show you, I went ahead and stuck the feet on the PCB. And let me show you one more thing here that's important, is your COM ports 3 and 4. What these are actually for is for a trackball. So if you do use a trackball, even with my JAMA harness that has all the player 2 removed, where some people hook the trackball, you can still hook them in right here if you actually get one that's actually made for a 60 and 1. So I'm going to cut real quick, and then I'm going to mount up this stuff, and then I'll go back from there. Alright, basically I found the easiest way, I'm going to kind of carry the camera around here, is to set your board on here, and then you can kind of get an idea of where you can mount the boards by how long the harness is. You should pretty much be able to mount it on any side. We decided to stick it right here, and then you need to mount the power supply pretty close by because the wires have to go to it as well. So let me stick the harness on, and I'll wire up the 3 wires, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, now we have this hooked up. I basically plugged the JAMA harness in. Again, you can see how that goes. I'll pull that back off, you can actually see. Again, the power is all on this piece right here. So make sure that this thing says part side is facing towards you. Plug that in. And then down here on the power supply, again, you only have, there's 3 wires. The red goes to the 5 volt, black to the ground, and 12 volt is the yellow. And again, this little harness right here is not used. So now you only have one little piece of wiring harness that's left that's not hooked in, which is this right here. And what these are for is for the service and the test switch. we'll set the panel in real quick and then we'll hook that up. Alright guys, I'm going to show you how to wire up this amp and this speaker panel right here on the desk. That way it's easier to show. You're going to have to make a few cables at this point in the game. This is again common stuff you can get at your local hardware store. I am going to include one of these splitter cables, the 5.5 by 2.1 splitters. It'll look like this, or it may only have two. It may only have two outs. It depends on whatever we have in stock. But I'll show you where this will go here in a second. But what you need to do first off, you need to make 2 wires each for these that look like this. Basically, we'll have your typical wire connector on them, and then just peel that one back, make them, I don't know, a foot or 2 foot long, however. You can also solder them if you want to solder, but you need 4 of those. So we have that, and then you need that and that. So basically you have 2 reds, 2 blacks. And what you're going to do with these wires is you will take them, if you'll look on the speaker, you'll see a plus and a minus. Hook the black to the minus. You kind of got to hold these little boards too to get them on. They are a pain. I always just solder them, but I know some of you guys don't have solder guns, so we'll do it the old style way. Just be careful when you're pushing them on to not push this into the speaker. You can break it off pretty easily. So let's set that one there. And then we'll do this one. Again, I highly suggest soldering. These things are pretty delicate, actually. Alright. And there's those. So that's the actual speaker panel itself. That's ready to go. So let's set that out of the way. The amp inside will have a connector like this. It'll have a plus and a minus on it, which is, you know, basically your hot and ground. And you need to make a little cable, a little pigtail cable, and you need to use these ends right here. These right here this right here will actually connect to the power supply. This is how we're going to wire in the amp and the monitor. So all you'll need to do here is take a screwdriver and stick the black into the negative, tighten it down, and then stick the red into the positive. And I'm actually being bad because I'm not using proper colors. This is going to hook to your 12 volt, so I should actually be using yellow and black, but unfortunately I don't have any yellow wire here, so we're using what we have. So basically at this point you'll have a wire that'll look just like this, and what you're going to end up doing is actually sticking it on here. You're already going to have one wire on it already on the 12 volt, so you can basically piggyback them and stick them together. It doesn't matter. This is a good place to use the other ground. So maybe whenever you hook up the actual JAMA harness, maybe use this ground on this side, so that'll leave this one free, which will be right next to the 12. So basically what you'll do is you'll hook this one to the 12, and I'll show you what it looks like on the actual machine too. I'm just trying to do it here so that way you get a better idea of what's going on. And like that. So this right here will give us a standard 5.5 by 2.1 12 volt out, and this will hook to our amp and to our monitor to power them. Alright, so let's set the speaker back in here, that way we can show you how all this goes. This little cable right here, we're going to actually end up using it. This will be used, this is on the actual Arcade1Up. This comes from factory. This is the plug that goes from the power from the base up to the monitor. So we're actually going to use this. You can take this piece off right here because you won't need it. So basically the way all this will hook up, it's pretty simplistic. What you'll do on your amp, you'll have a left and a right. Take your red and make sure you do the left and the right correctly. Stick your red in there. Stick your black in there. And that right there will be right hand speaker. And then on the left hand, do your wire in that one. And your black wire in that one. And it'll look just like that. So now at this point, what you want to do is you want to use this splitter, and basically you'll connect this to this, and then one of these will plug into the amp just like so. That will provide 12 volts for this. And then what you'll do is, to power your monitor to the LCD driver board, you'll plug your Arcade1Up cable in that came with it into there, and then run this one up to the LCD board and plug it in. That'll give you 12 volts in both places. To hook this to the amp to the actual board, again, is very simple. It'll come with this cable right here. It'll come with this. And what you'll do is you'll plug this into the amp. And then simply on your 60-in-1, you'll have a standard 3.5 out. Take this, plug it in there. It's as easy as that. One more thing I want to show you real quick while I have the board out. Whenever you get these in, this is the master dip switch settings. Usually from factory they're set on off, on, off. The one that you'll want to change for sure, because I know you guys, you'll want to set number 3 to on. So you just simply push that one up. And what number 3 does, it allows for saving of the high scores, which I know is important. Alright, back to the machine, guys. Alright guys, we're back at the machine. I have the JAMA harness unplugged right now, so I have plenty of slop in the harness, so I can pull up the control panel here all the way and show you what I'm doing. But basically all you'll do at this point is take this, drop this in here, actually make sure to feed these wires over this board. You don't want them under it for sure. And that'll set in right there. And now will be a good time to hook in your service and test switch. Let's hook this service and test switch in real quick. Let's reach down in here and grab the only little set of wires that we have left that are not hooked to anything. You'll have a orange, red, and 2 blacks. You can actually not worry about one of the blacks because this one has a daisy chain, so both of them are ground. So we don't actually what we'll do is we'll do this. I'll stick this one on this one, and I'll stick the daisy chain on this one. That at least pull them up out of the way, keep them from dangling. And you can stick whichever one, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which is which. You can stick the black on either side too. Again, it's just a switch, so. And it doesn't matter which is service or which one is set up. Alright. I'm sorry, test. Alright, so there you go. So there's your service and your test buttons wired in. So now that's done. At this point you're pretty much done from the top side. This is all you can really do. So you can basically put all that back together. And let me show you inside and show you what I got hooked up. Guys, I have everything actually hooked up now on the machine. Again, let's go over it again. If you'll get down here, the one thing that's important whenever you're hooking up your speakers here, make sure that your wires are paired. Don't grab the negative or the ground off the opposite side of the speaker, so make sure that your plus and your minus are all one speaker that go to each. You don't want them jump from side to side. We have this hooked in right here. This is the cable it comes with, and again it's plugged into the 60-in-1 right here. And let's go up to the inside. And here on the inside, again I hooked my ground wire. This is the little piggyback that we made with the 5.5 by 2.1. I hooked it under the ground and I just piggybacked it under this one. If you're super anal, I mean, you can basically cut this yellow wire and splice these two together and make it as one, but again, it doesn't matter. You can put two of them together. So we have this piece right here in it, and this is your splitter. So now what we'll do is whenever we hook in our LCD driver, this last little leg that we have left, we'll hook it up and send it up to the monitor. And your amp is basically fully ready to go at this time. So let's plug in the LCD driver and let me show you how to wire this power supply to the wall. Alright guys, we are officially at the end of the road, almost. All we need to do now is basically hook in the power supply to the wall. What we've done is we've taken your standard computer cable or power cable that you got 50 of in your drawers, and we've simply cut the ends off. And then what we've done is we've put ends like this on one, and then standard females on the other. And the way it'll work is what you'll do on your power supply here, you have ground, neutral, and line. Basically your line is going to be your black wire, which is your hot. Your neutral is a white wire typically, which is a neutral, and ground is usually the green. This one that I actually cut up was actually correctly color coded, which is kind of scary because they're usually not, but this one actually was. So let me hook this in real quick to where they go. We got ground. Here's my screwdriver. And then neutral again is the white, and if yours are not color coded correctly, it really doesn't matter. You just need to make sure that you hook them upright on the opposite end whenever you get to the MI filter here at the end. As long as they're hooked on the right spot on that, that's really all that matters. And the black goes here. Alright, so that is the connection now to the power supply. Now let's hook up the EMI filter. Okay, the way this thing will hook into the EMI filter, this will actually be the next step. I'm going to go ahead and show you how this is done and how it's labeled. That way you don't have to mess with it. This right here will be your neutral. This right here will be your line. And of course that's always going to be your ground, anyone that's turned sideways. So simple enough, hook your ground to that, and again look on here, your neutral is your white, so put that one there, and that leaves the line. Your line is the actual hot wire itself. That's the one that'll get you. Now why I always use these, it's pretty simple. People will actually cut their cord, their PC cord, and hook it directly to here and then go directly to the wall. the thing you get into if you do that, in my opinion, is if someone is walking around the cabinet and for whatever reason the cord gets pulled out, it'll rip it out of the power supply, and then once you rip it out of the power supply, you basically have a hot 110 flopping around your living room, which is probably a bad thing. So let me show you how this goes. Now basically from here, all you'll do, this right here will mount to the back of the Arcade1Up. You'll have to cut a hole in the panel to mount this. Then this will go straight to the wall. So basically if someone trips over this, it'll basically rip out of here, and it won't do anything to the inside. So you're good. Okay, I now have the power supply plugged in to the EMI filter. Again, this needs to be actually mounted into the back panel of the Arcade1Up for safety reasons. I just have it done like this for now because this is temporary. But from here, it'll go to the wall. Let me show you the rest of the connections that I did. I went ahead and installed the LCD driver. I have another video actually already done on this one. I'll put a link to it in the description so you can see how that was installed. But again, go back down here into your splitter, and I ran the cable from the splitter up to the LCD driver, and everything else I think I've pretty much went over. Let's actually power this thing on and see if it works. Alright guys, we're going to power this up and go into either the test or service mode. I'm not sure which button is which, so in order to use the buttons, all you do is turn the power on and then hold the button down. And once you see it start doing that, you can let off. We'll see which one this boots into. This looks to be the test mode. So basically in this screen right here, this is you can check your buttons and your joysticks to see if they work properly. Like I'm fixing to push up. So player 1 up, when I push up, it lights up. Player 1 down, lights up. Left, right. Player 1 start. S1, player 1. S2, S3. And the only other button you have is going to be the player 2 start, which is right there. And then the service button obviously works, and the test button. Once you get done doing that, power it off again at the EMI switch. Power it back on, push the other button. And again, it goes into a similar screen. And this should put you into the dip settings, so where you can change everything. Alright, basically what we want to do here, if you'll read where you're at as you scroll down, you can see, actually, as you scroll across, excuse me, you can see what you're doing. You can see it's highlighting where it turns off or on. What I always do on this, I always put it in free mode since we don't have a coin button. So go across until free play lights up, and then you hit S1, and now it says on. So that'll put it in free play mode. And then I also like to turn the demo music off because it is quite annoying. So we'll go up here to where it says demo music and hit S1. And it says demo music no. And that's pretty much the only setup you really need to do to really start playing. And basically it says hit start. And see it says setup OK. Let me do it one more time. You hit the player 1, setup OK. That means it's saved. And let's actually turn this thing on now. Once you power the game on, it'll go into the system initialization, and it'll basically start at 0 and go up to 60. It's basically verifying all the game ROMs. Once it hits 60, it'll say it's finalizing, and then it'll actually start the gameplay. And then to unlock the screen, hit player 1, and you can go from screen to screen, game to game. If you hold S1, hit that button, it'll take you into a preview of each game. It'll actually show you that. Hit S1 again, it'll go out. If you physically want to play the game, then go to the game you want to do, hit player 1, and the game will start. And that's all there is to it.